Hello, I'm Darren Magee, and the topic for today is continuing in the series looking at some of the common characteristics and behaviours associated with narcissism. Today, I'm going to be focusing on jealousy and envy, so if you find this video interesting, please consider subscribing to my channel. Now, first of all, I would like to say that jealousy and envy are terms that are often used as if they mean the same thing, but they are quite different. Jealousy is what we feel whenever we fear we might lose something or someone to someone else. Envy, well, that's what we feel whenever we see someone with more than us or is more accomplished than us. And they can be normal emotions to have. A healthy level of jealousy means we might protect something that's very important to us. A healthy level of envy can inspire us. But these emotions can take on quite a distinct hue whenever they're viewed through the lens of narcissism. In fact, one of the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder in the DSM is believing that others are envious of them and being envious of others themselves. But narcissistic people tend to be driven by an insatiable need for admiration and superiority. There's an inflated sense of self-importance, a huge sense of entitlement. There's a lack of genuine empathy for other people. They can also be very disagreeable. And while some of their traits might seem contradictory to feelings of envy and jealousy, they can actually contribute to those feelings and explain some of their behaviour. So to understand what lies behind their envy and jealousy would be firstly if they perceive a threat to their sense of superiority. Now, if faced with someone else's success, they might experience jealousy because their self-esteem is challenged. They might feel diminished if someone else's accomplishment can cast doubt on their exceptional status, so they can guard their self-image, their status, jealously. The envy can stem from their incessant need for validation and admiration, for being special, flawless, accomplished. It reinforces their sense of self-worth. So when someone else captures the spotlight, their envy can drive them to try to redirect attention back to themselves. So they can experience both envy and jealousy if others received attention or praise that they believe they are entitled to, often without having to earn it. Another common characteristic of narcissism is competitiveness. Narcissistic people constantly compare themselves to others, seeking to validate their belief in their own exceptionalism. They don't like to be overlooked or have to share the spotlight. So when they perceive others being successful, they can become quite competitive. They often try to minimize the threat posed to their own perceived superiority. And what we often see there is grandiosity, bragging, belittling others, sometimes just spoiled childlike pettiness. Quite often they'll engage in one-upmanship to try to outdo the person they envy, not necessarily out of a genuine desire to excel or to improve, but just as a means to try to restore their own sense of superiority and regain the spotlight. Also, narcissistic people struggle to genuinely empathize with others, which makes it challenging for them to appreciate or even understand someone else's perspective or their successes. Their inability to see beyond themselves, their own desires, their own needs, can trigger jealousy when someone else achieves recognition or happiness. They fear they might lose or have to share their status. They also believe that they are entitled to special treatment and aren't so good with humility, so they can feel envious when others possess qualities that can challenge their sense of entitlement. So how does the envy and jealousy manifest? Well, in the workplace, narcissistic people can feel both envious and jealous towards their workmates, their colleagues who receive promotions, recognition, or praise. And this can lead to negative behaviours like belittling, undermining, or diminishing other people's accomplishments, their skills. Sometimes it can lead to them stealing other people's ideas, claiming them as their own, or taking credit for other people's work. Sometimes just seeking to try to outdo them somehow, just to try to regain the spotlight. In families, a narcissistic parent can experience both envy and jealousy towards their own children. In fact, they often foster an environment of jealousy and envy among their own kids by favouring one child over the other. The kids have to compete for positive regard. As those children grow up, become more autonomous, successful in their own right, a narcissistic parent can fear losing the control they had over them, especially if they move away. They can become envious of their successes, their relationships. In friendships, narcissistic people can experience envy over their friends' happiness, success, or popularity. They can experience jealousy if their friend maybe meets a new partner, gets a new job, or has other friends. And this can lead to possessive behaviours. There can be manipulation, sulking, and so on. People with very deeply ingrained narcissistic traits tend to engage in all or nothing thinking. For instance, if you're my friend, you've no room for other friends. Again, they won't share the status. They also fear losing the attention and the loyalty. And even with their friends, they can still be very competitive. Now, if they can't outdo their friend's success or happiness, well, they might claim they were cheated somehow or they're being treated unfairly. They may even discard them. Or they might try to gain sympathy by portraying themselves as victims. Anything in an effort to try to redirect the focus back onto themselves and their own experiences. Now, an example would be a friend of mine who told me that whenever they went on a date, their narcissistic friend would be constantly texting them, complaining about how they're all alone, they have to stay in all alone, they have nobody. They would even be sending updates about their date that they had uncovered on social media. Sometimes, though, narcissistic people can use envy to try to manipulate social dynamics. They might gravitate towards other people, friendships, relationships where they perceive themselves to be more successful. They want to be around people who will admire their superiority. They feel good about themselves when they feel better than others. Now, on social media, narcissistic people can experience both envy and jealousy when they see others posting things about their accomplishments, their lifestyle. This can trigger feelings of inadequacy and envy, and it might lead them to try to seek validation by posting either their own glamorous lifestyles or maybe just living their lives like open wounds, trying to suck all the joy out of other people's lives, their experiences. They can also engage in trolling, attacking, criticizing those they envy, just to try to ease their own fragile ego. Lastly, in romantic relationships, narcissistic people might feel threatened by their partner's interactions with others, and the jealousy often arises from a fear of being replaced. This can lead to controlling behaviors, monitoring their partner's activities, trying to control their interactions, or sometimes just accusing them of infidelity without any evidence. In some cases, they can sabotage their partners, sabotage their efforts, hinder their plans, such as making them late for important appointments like job interviews, undermining them in front of others, usually in a passive-aggressive kind of way, like unkind, belittling humor. So in conclusion, the jealousy displayed by narcissistic people is often rooted in their fear of losing their perceived superiority, and an inability to empathize, to see outside of themselves, can drive feelings of envy and inadequacy. Also, because they lack humility, they struggle to accept that others can know things that they don't know or be more accomplished than them in different areas. And their quest to be special, admired, coupled with a fragile self-esteem, can create a breeding ground for these complex emotions, which can manifest in various aspects of their lives. They impact their professional relationships, their friendships, romantic partnerships, even their online interactions. And because they have that huge sense of entitlement, they often view themselves as deserving of special treatment. So when they perceive others achieving success, now regardless of that other person's effort or their talent, then envy emerges. And it often stems from the belief that they deserve that success without having to work for it. And sadly, because they lack insight, the very things they do to try to gain attention, a sense of superiority, such as belittling, bragging, sabotaging, gossiping, these are the very things that often drive other people away. However, when that happens, narcissistic people often try to convince themselves they're just being ignored or avoided out of envy. So that's just a brief outline of narcissistic people and the motivations behind and the different ways in which envy and jealousy can manifest. Now, as always, please feel free to add anything I may have missed in the comments section, or some interesting conversations start from these videos. But if you find this video interesting, please consider subscribing to my channel, and until next time, thanks for watching.